In the middle of my daughter's funeral, my 7-year-old grandson whispered something that froze my blood, and when he lifted her blouse, the entire church went silent. What I saw that day changed everything. If you're watching this, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It helps this story reach someone who might need courage today. The scent of lilies was thick inside St. Peter's Church, clinging to my throat like invisible fingers. My daughter, Claire, lay in a polished mahogany casket at the center of the aisle, dressed in white, her photo beside her, smiling, alive, mocking the stillness around her. Beside me, Ethan, her 7-year-old boy, gripped my wrinkled hand like it was the last rope holding him to this world. His tiny body shook, swallowed in a shirt 2 sizes too big. We'd spent the night crying together. He'd asked me where Mommy had gone. I had no answer. As the priest began the prayers, a hush settled over the crowd. That's when Ethan slipped away from my hand. His little feet patted down the stone floor toward the casket. "Grandma," he whispered, just loud enough for the silence to carry. "Mommy's tummy, it's big." I froze. Before anyone could react, Ethan reached out and lifted the edge of her burial gown. Gasps rippled through the front pews. Candlelight flickered across Claire's abdomen, a massive, deep purple bruise stretching from her ribs to her lower stomach. It looked like the aftermath of something brutal, not a simple accident. My blood turned to ice. Mark, my son-in-law, surged forward from the front row, grabbed Ethan by the arm and hissed, "Ethan, stop it!" His face was pale, his voice controlled, but his eyes gave him away. Fear. Not grief. Fear. He positioned his broad frame between the casket and the crowd. Ethan burst into tears. "I wasn't playing, Grandma." "I saw it." Murmurs spread like wildfire through the church. I gripped the cold edge of the casket to keep from collapsing. Mark had said Claire fell down the stairs, but that bruise told another story. After the ceremony, when most mourners had gone, I begged Mr. Alvarez, the funeral director, to let me see Claire one more time. We went into the back room where harsh lights stripped away every comforting shadow. Under that light, there was no mistaking it. No head injuries. No broken bones. Only her stomach destroyed by blunt force. "This doesn't look like a fall, ma'am, Mr. Wurs," Alvarez said softly. "I've seen a lot." This was deliberate. I leaned over my daughter's lifeless body, kissed her cold forehead, and whispered, "I will find out who did this to you." 2 days later, I stood before the black iron gates of the house Mark had shared with Claire. It was immaculate, high walls, marble floors, expensive paintings, a place meant to impress, a place that had always felt cold to me. Mark had taken Ethan to his parents' house. I was alone as I packed Claire's things, her lavender-scented clothes, her old photo frames, the soft blue sweater she'd loved in winter. Each item cut me a little deeper. Then, in the back of a dresser, I found a small wooden box, dust-covered, locked with a tiny clasp. Inside were things that stole the air from my lungs: a prenatal appointment card from St. Louis Women's Clinic, 12 weeks pregnant. A strip of ultrasound images, my unborn grandchild's tiny silhouette, handwritten diary pages, ink blurred by tears. I sat on her bed and read every trembling line. He got angry again and hit me hard in the stomach, but I think when he finds out I'm pregnant, he'll change. I don't dare tell Mom. I'll endure it for our family. My stomach hurts so much, I just pray the baby's okay. I pressed the pages to my chest and wept until my bones ached. She had hidden her suffering to protect me. That's when the sound of the front door unlocking jolted me upright. Mark walked in, smelling like cheap perfume that wasn't Claire's. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, wearing that indifferent smirk. "Still here, Helen?" he asked flatly. "I told you I'd handle this." "I'm packing my daughter's things," I said, clutching the box inside my purse like a weapon. "Do what you want," he shrugged. "Just don't take too long. Ethan's waiting." I walked out without looking back, my heart pounding. I now held something Mark didn't know I had, proof that Claire was pregnant and terrified. The next morning, I visited the clinic. The receptionist recognized the appointment card immediately. Moments later, I sat across from Dr. Herrera, an older man with tired eyes. He opened Claire's file and sighed heavily. "She came in with severe internal bleeding," he said. "The fetus was lost. Her uterus was badly injured. By the time she reached us, she'd already lost too much blood." "Was it from a fall?" I asked. He shook his head firmly. "No. There were no fractures, no head trauma. All the injuries were to the abdomen. One strong, focused blow. And her husband Mark told us to finalize everything quickly. He refused an autopsy." I clenched the edges of my purse until my fingers went numb. Mark hadn't just lied. He'd covered it up. As I left the clinic, I passed a group of expectant mothers laughing in the waiting room. Claire should have been one of them. Instead, she was under the earth. A few days later, at the market, I spotted Mark through the window of a cafe. He wasn't mourning. He was laughing with Veronica, his young secretary. She leaned into him, their fingers intertwined. Less than 40 days after my daughter's death, he looked like a man in love. I ducked behind a row of flower pots and watched them. His hand on her thigh, her giggle. The way they fit together like two people who'd never lost anything. My grip on the bouquet of chrysanthemums tightened until the stems snapped. My daughter had died pregnant and alone, and this man, this monster, was laughing over lattes. That was the moment I decided he wasn't just going to be arrested. He was going to feel it. I didn't rush. Revenge, I knew, wasn't about screaming in someone's face. It was about letting the truth corner them inch by inch until the mask cracked. The day after I saw Mark with Veronica, I woke up before dawn, wrapped my scarf tight, and went to the flower market. I bought a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, Claire's favorite, their petals crisp in the morning air. I handed them to a delivery boy. "Take these to Mark Rivers Construction downtown," I said. "Leave them at his office door. Don't say who sent them." He nodded, curious but silent. Every day after that, I sent another bouquet. Every day, those flowers sat at his office like a ghost waiting. And every night, I sat in front of Claire's portrait, looking at the ultrasound picture of the grandchild I'd never meet. With shaky hands, I scrawled on the back of the photo, "Give me back my child, Mark." Under the cover of midnight, I slipped that photo into his mailbox. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at that cold mansion, imagining his face at dawn when he found it. I wanted him to feel Claire breathing down his neck. The whispers started in the neighborhood within a week. Vendors at the market spoke in hushed tones. "He's losing it," one fishmonger told another. "Up all night, pacing his porch, smoking like a chimney." Another added, "I saw him sitting on the steps, bottle in hand, muttering, 'It wasn't my fault.' He looked possessed." Hearing that gave me no joy, only a grim sense of purpose. He deserved worse than nightmares. I remembered the lullaby Claire used to sing to Ethan every night, a gentle melody that still echoed in the walls of my house. An idea formed, not just revenge haunting. I called Mr. John, an old electrician from my neighborhood. "I need your help," I told him quietly. No questions. We drove to Mark's house when he was out. In the garage sat an old radio. I asked John to rig it to turn on automatically at midnight, playing the lullaby on a loop. He frowned. "Mrs. Helen, this isn't normal. I know what I'm doing," I interrupted. That night, I stood behind the gate, hidden in the shadows, watching as the house went dark. At midnight, the radio clicked on, filling the empty garage with the soft, eerie sound of Claire's lullaby. The next morning, the vegetable vendor was buzzing. "You won't believe it," she whispered. "He smashed the radio to pieces in the middle of the night, ran outside with a hammer like a madman." I lowered my head, pretending to sort herbs, hiding my small, cold smile. The mask was cracking, but revenge alone wouldn't bring justice. For that, I needed proof he couldn't deny. I started with Veronica. She was the weak link. Late one afternoon, I waited in a coffee shop across from Mark's office. At exactly 5 p.m., Veronica emerged, dressed in a tight red dress and high heels that clicked confidently against the sidewalk. She had no idea someone was following her. She walked to a small cafe near Tungamunga Park, ordered an orange juice, and scrolled through her phone, legs crossed, completely at ease. I walked straight up to her table, dropped my purse on the surface with a thud, and sat down. He froze. "Mrs. Helen?" she said, frowning. Panic flashed in her eyes before she masked it with disdain. "What are you doing here?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. I took out my phone and placed photos on the table. Mark and her at the cafe, fingers intertwined, his hand on her shoulder, laughing. "My daughter's body isn't even cold," I said evenly. "And you're enjoying this." She pressed her lips together but tried to stay calm. "That's none of your business. Everyone knows." Claire fell. I cut her off by dropping Claire's diary pages in front of her. Her hands trembled as she stared at the shaky handwriting, the bruised hopes of a woman she'd helped betray. "Veronica," I leaned in, my voice low and sharp, "the police are about to get involved. Do you really think Mark will protect you or throw you under the bus to save himself?" Her face drained of color, her fingers clutched the edge of the table. Her eyes darted around the cafe like a trapped animal. Her voice came out in a whisper. "That night," she stammered, "Claire came home early. She found us. She screamed, cried. She said I'd destroyed her family." Mark snapped. He hit her hard in the stomach. I tried to stop him, but it happened so fast. The world seemed to tilt. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing it out loud was like being stabbed. I stared at her, my voice colder than I thought possible. "You watched my pregnant daughter die," I said. "You let it happen." She looked down, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." I didn't reply. I calmly gathered the diary pages and photos, put them back into my purse, and walked out. Behind me, she stayed frozen, shoulders shaking, realizing what she'd unleashed. Her confession echoed in my mind all the way home. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was clarity. I had Mark's lie, Claire's diary, medical proof, the pregnancy, and now, Veronica's confession. I began to build my case like a soldier preparing for war. I made copies of every document, recorded Veronica's confession in secret during that meeting, and stored everything in a locked drawer. Meanwhile, Mark was unraveling faster. The flowers kept arriving. The neighborhood gossips kept talking. The lullaby incident had him spooked. One evening, as I walked past his mansion, I saw him through the iron gates. He was sitting on the porch steps, head in his hands, hair disheveled. For a moment, I almost saw the man Claire had once loved. But then I remembered the bruises, the diary, the ultrasound, and I kept walking. The following week, I put on my gray sweater, slipped my purse over my shoulder, the purse that now carried everything, and walked into the St. Louis Police Department. The receptionist took one look at my face and led me to Commander Hector Luna, a man known for being strict but fair. I laid everything out on his desk. The prenatal card, the ultrasound photos, the diary, the audio recording of Veronica's trembling confession. "My daughter didn't fall," I said, voice shaking but firm. "This man killed her and my grandchild." Luna listened carefully, brows furrowed deeper with each piece of evidence. When Veronica's confession played, his jaw clenched. "This is enough to open a criminal investigation," he said finally. "But you need to be ready. These cases are long and brutal." I met his gaze without flinching. "I've already lived through brutal," I said. 2 days later, Mark Rivers was arrested outside his office. I wasn't there, but I imagined it. The handcuffs, the stunned faces of his employees, his panic. What broke me wasn't his arrest. It was Ethan. My sweet grandson, clutching the teddy bear Claire had made for him, watching his father being dragged away in handcuffs, crying. It shattered me. But I knew, better one sharp pain now than a lifetime of lies later. The courthouse smelled of old wood and dust, the kind that clings to history and heartbreak. I sat in the front row of the packed courtroom, my hands folded tightly around a handkerchief embroidered with white daisies, Claire's favorite flower. I had stitched that handkerchief for her when she was 15. Today, it was the only thing keeping my shaking hands steady. Mark sat in the defendant's box in a tailored suit, but the confident man I once knew was gone. His eyes darted nervously from the judge to the jury, to the evidence table piled with the pieces of his crimes. The prosecutor, a young woman with sharp eyes and a voice like steel, laid everything out in methodical, devastating order. The pregnancy records, the ultrasound images, Claire's diary pages, her pain etched in trembling ink, the recorded confession of Veronica Chavez, the secretary who thought she could keep the truth tucked away behind red lipstick and late-night whispers. Every new piece of evidence made Mark flinch like he'd been struck. Veronica was called to the stand. She entered with her head down, blonde hair tied back, makeup barely masking her pale, trembling face. Under oath, she repeated everything she'd told me at that cafe. Her voice cracked more than once, but the words were clear. I saw him do it. Claire found us. She screamed. Mark hit her in the stomach. I didn't stop him. I should have, but I didn't. Her statement sucked the air out of the room. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably. One woman shook her head in disgust. Mark jumped up from his seat shouting, "She's lying. It's all her." The judge's gavel came down hard, silencing him. But the damage was done. His panic was visible, raw, undeniable. The prosecutor didn't need to do much after that. She simply played the lullaby recording Veronica had unknowingly helped me capture at the cafe. Mark's reaction told the jury everything they needed to know. When the judge read out the order for Mark to be held without bail on charges of homicide and aggravated domestic assault, his knees buckled. He gripped the bars, his face pale as chalk, eyes wide with the fear I had been waiting to see. The courtroom murmured. My breath caught. It wasn't victory. It wasn't joy. It was a slow, cold release, like exhaling after holding it in for months. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. I walked past them quietly, clutching the daisy handkerchief. This was not a story for headlines. This was my daughter's life, my grandson's future, my family's scar. In the weeks that followed, the trial process moved forward. It was long, exhausting, filled with legal jargon and painful testimonies. But I showed up every day. Not because I enjoyed seeing Mark crumble, but because Claire deserved someone to sit in that room for her. She had died carrying hope in her womb, hiding bruises under long sleeves, smiling through the pain to protect everyone else. The least I could do was be her voice now. Ethan lived with me during this time. He was confused, scared, and quiet. Some nights he woke up crying for both his parents. I held him and whispered, "You're safe here, sweetheart. Grandma's got you." The prosecution built its case on fact, evidence, and testimony. Mark's defense tried to paint it as a tragic accident, a moment of loss of control. But the diary, the doctor's report, the flowers, Veronica's confession, they painted a different picture. A man who didn't lose control once. A man who had controlled everything until the truth finally broke through. Months later, the verdict came. Guilty. All counts. I didn't cheer. I didn't clap. I simply closed my eyes, let out a shaky breath, and felt a single tear run down my cheek. Justice didn't bring Claire back. It didn't bring back the baby I never got to hold. But it gave their stories weight. It made sure their pain wasn't dismissed as an accident. Mark was sentenced to life in prison. Veronica received a reduced sentence for cooperation, though she would carry the weight of her silence forever. After the trial, I visited Claire's grave on a quiet evening. The cemetery was bathed in the golden light of sunset. I knelt down on the cold ground and placed a bouquet of white daisies on the headstone. "Claire," I whispered, my fingers tracing her name. "It's done. The truth is out. He will never hurt anyone again. Rest now, my love." The wind brushed softly through the trees, and for a moment I imagined her laugh, the one that used to fill our kitchen on Saturday mornings when we baked cornbread together. I stayed there for a long time, letting the quiet settle into my bones. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like a tree after the storm has finally passed. The following month, I walked into a modest building in downtown St. Louis, a small nonprofit called Brave Women. The walls were painted light blue and posters hung everywhere urging women to speak up, to seek help. I told them Claire's story, everything from the funeral to the trial. I didn't hold back. The director, Teresa, listened with kind but fierce eyes. When I finished, she took my hand and said, "Your voice could save lives." And so I began volunteering. I handed out flyers at markets, I helped cook meals at the shelter, and I sat with women who whispered their stories for the first time. Some had bruises. Some had only fear. All of them had pain. I told them what I wished someone had told Claire: don't stay silent, don't let love blind you to danger. Speak, act, trust your instincts. Each time I shared, I felt Claire beside me. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She had become a warning, a story that could light someone else's path out of the dark. One evening, after a long day at the shelter, I walked back to the cemetery. Ethan came with me, holding a small bouquet of daisies in his little hands. We knelt together before Claire's grave. He placed the flowers carefully, then looked up at me with wide eyes. "Grandma," he whispered, "do you think Mommy can see us?" I smiled through the tears. "Yes, sweetheart. I think she's right here." The breeze picked up, rustling the flowers gently. I closed my eyes and whispered, "We're okay, Claire. We're moving forward. If you've made it this far, thank you." Stories like this are painful, but they're real, and they matter. If you believe no one cares, remember, silence is what abusers count on. Don't give it to them. Share your story. Speak up for someone else. And if this story moved you, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Every story shared is a candle that might light someone else's way out of the darkness.